Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel where I randomly work on things. What we have here is two nearly identical motors. The one on the left is a 1989 Johnson 40 horsepower. The one on the right is a 1991 Johnson 40 horsepower. Both are equipped with power trim and tilt, which is, I don't know, common enough I'd say. The only difference is this one is all original, this one has some aftermarket parts put onto it. Now there's two electric motors inside of these things. One is the starter, the other one is the power trim and tilt motor. So if you need to replace the power trim and tilt motor, you're going to find that the OEM version or the factory version costs about $250, where an aftermarket is about $50. Now that is a huge price difference, and I don't really think anybody's had the two next to each other to really compare the difference. So that's what this little demonstration is all about, to show you the difference between the two. Now originally when I thought about doing this, my plan was to hook it up to one switch. The problem is one is going to be faster than the other, and I don't want it to just sit there and run needlessly. So I have it on two switches, and the plan is just click them at the same time. I have them both hooked up to two handheld switches so I can push them both independently. Alright, let's show you the sound between the two first. That's factory. That's the aftermarket. So the aftermarket sounds decently weak. Going up, down sounds normal. Factory, in my opinion, sounds smoother and more powerful. Same situation with down. Now when they hit the bottom, they make that weird noise. If you keep trying to run them down, that's normal. They both do that. Now, to eliminate the question of, well, maybe one battery was more powerful than the other, they are both connected to one battery. So now let's do a side-by-side comparison and just run them both up and then run them both down. The factory one on the left is considerably quicker than the one on the right. Now let's bring them both back down. Now gravity assists them both going down. But this guy, the factory on the left, still outperforms the aftermarket on the right. Now let's give one a head start. OEM still wins. Now you may say, well, that's fine and dandy for the power trim tilt, but what about a starter? Well, my friends, aftermarket starter, OEM starter. So the engine on the right has an aftermarket starter as well as an aftermarket starter solenoid. The engine on the left still has the OEM starter on it as well as the OEM starter solenoid. Now to get a true idea of the test here, it should be under load. Spark plugs are still installed into the motor. I probably will disconnect them just in case one of these things does decide it wants to fire up. Yeah, it should keep it from doing something. Alright, let's see what happens. Yeah, my opinion, normal sounding, pretty beefy, spins it just fine. let's see what happens. The only real noticeable thing is that Bendix not going back down. Now, should the engine have started, I'm sure it would have. Well, in my opinion, the starters perform virtually identical. The only thing I notice is this one has a little cleaner sound to it, where that one kind of has a high-pitched metal squeal. It could be the Bendix here being just slightly oversized, rubbing a little more on the flywheel than the factory one would. But for the most part, you can't really notice a difference. I'm sure with the hoods on, you'd probably never know. As far as the starter solenoid goes, it worked fine. No complaint there. Now, as far as cost goes, an aftermarket starter will run you about 60 bucks. An OEM starter will run you about 220. So there's a substantial difference there too. Another thing I forgot to mention is the wiring on the aftermarket power trim and tilt motor. You can tell is a little bit thinner than the OEM. OEM feels to be about a 12 gauge. The aftermarket seems to be about a 14. Now, the motor on the aftermarket could kind of be power hungry. Had it had better wiring, could it have gone up and down faster? Probably. But it's what it comes with, so I don't know. I'm no engineer. Such as the battery cable wiring could be a lot older on the aftermarket motor here. It could be a lot newer on the OEM. I don't know. But in fairness, I did use much thicker wire on the aftermarket motor, and I used the factory stuff on the OEM one here. Next thing that could skew our results a little bit are where the engine pivots, which is on the steering or tilt tube here. If this one does have some corrosion or something on it, it could slow down the progress of getting this motor up and down. I don't believe that to be the case. Before I started this video, I made sure the tilt pins down here were in the same spot. Pins came in and out without an issue. Usually those pins are going to stick long before the tilt tube will, but it is a slim possibility. Another not as notable item is the front cover, or the air silencer, is missing on this engine. This is the OEM example, and it's present on the aftermarket example. So this one is probably 12 ounces lighter. However, that engine has the VRO pump removed and a fuel pump installed. This one still has a VRO pump. I don't believe that's a significant difference to really change any results. And this one's also missing the lifting hook, which actually was pretty annoying when I was putting this motor up here. That kind of bugged me. I should have taken it off this motor, put it on that one temporarily, but I didn't. Now to answer the question, should you buy an aftermarket or an OEM? I can't answer that. I guess it depends on your financial situation and how much money you want to put into your motor. Although I suppose depending on how you use your boat also comes into play. If you're going to be going up and down a lot with the power trim and tilt, I probably would go with the OEM one. If you're going to be using it occasionally, getting it on and off the trailer, you might just want to consider getting an aftermarket. Now, where I primarily use my boat in the river, it goes from shallow to deep at a moment's notice. Also, whenever you bring the boat back to the shore, or beach the boat if you will, you quickly need to get that engine up, get the boat on the beach, get it on and off, enjoy your day. And when you go to launch the boat back into the water, push it off the beach, you're pushing it into the river current. So basically what you do is you push the boat, you hop into the boat, you run to the back, you get the motor down, you start the engine, take off. Now you may think that sounds a little ridiculous, you don't need to do it that fast. Most of the time you're right, you don't. The problem is if you're in a beach that has a point or a bunch of rocks around it, you need to avoid those rocks, aka point. So when you push the boat out, you are now in the river current, which is pushing your boat right into those rocks. I don't want to say every second counts, but you got to be really quick about it. In that situation, it may be worth the extra $200 to get the factory parts. But again, is it a $200 difference? I don't know. You decide. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been a long time in the making because I got that engine with the aftermarket parts, and I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to keep an eye out for another one of these things. And when I find one, I'm going to do a comparison. If you bought a factory or aftermarket part and you have a story about it, please let me know in those comments below. Otherwise, see you all next time.